The Sexual Offense Treatment Board meeting is convening at 9:02 a.m. on July 10th, 2020 at the Health Licensing Office in Salem, Oregon. I will now call roll. Kelly Clementi here. Kelly Crane? Here. Bill Davis?
Here.
Joseph Ferguson?
Here.
Malcolm McDonald?
Here.
And Michelle Rowland-Schwartz? Here. Members, during the course of the meeting, please wait to speak until recognized by the chair. Once you've been recognized, please state your last name. Audience members are asked to sign in on the attendance roster. Public interested parties' feedback may be heard during the public interested parties' feedback period. It's indicated on the agenda. Everyone's asked to use appropriate language, manners, and protocols when conducting board business. The meeting is now called to order.
Good job. Okay, so first item is approval of the agenda. If someone could make a motion to approve the agenda.
Michelle, I move to approve the agenda.
This is Malcolm. I second it.
Okay.
Kelly, you have to do a roll call every time there's a vote.
Okay, so do I just do the roll? I don't have a little script here. All in favor of approving agenda? Kelly Crane? I don't have a script. Sorry.
You're fine. You're fine.
Okay. Bill Davis?
Aye.
Joseph Ferguson?
Aye.
Malcolm McDonald?
Aye.
And Michelle Rowland-Schwartz? Aye. Agenda is approved.
Well, you have to vote yourself individually.
Oh, Kelly Clementi, aye.
Perfect. All right, this is Sylvie again. We are on item number 3. You should have a script for that.
I don't. Unless it's the executive order or
yes, it's the one that says executive session script.
Oh, sorry. Okay. The Sexual Offense Treatment Board will now meet in executive session pursuant to ORS 192.660, ORS 192.355, and ORS 40.225 for the purpose of considering information related to the legal advice exempt from public disclosure at 9:05 a.m. on July 10th, 2020. Representatives of the news media and designated staff shall be allowed to attend the executive session. All other members of the audience are required to leave the room. Are there any representatives in the news media in the audience?
No.
Recognizing there is no news media in attendance, all other audience members are asked to leave the room during executive session. We will return to open session before taking any final action or making any final decisions. We're now in executive session.
Got everybody on. Maria, are you ready?
Yes, okay.
Maria's ready. So Kelly, if you could read your script.
The Sexual Offense Treatment Board will now exit executive session and reconvene open session at 9:42 a.m. No final decisions were made and no votes were taken in executive session. Members of the audience are welcome to return, and representatives of the media may once again report all board discussions and actions.
Okay, perfect. Thanks, Kelly. Is there by chance any members of the public on the phone? All right, hearing none, we will move along. So we are on item number 4 on the agenda. So we're on director's reports. Couple things. So we do have a new staff member so you get a lot of emails relating to board business from Maria. Well, Maria is transitioning into a different position, and so April is transitioning into Maria's position. So you'll start getting some emails and stuff from April Strobel instead of Maria. And they're transitioning into that right now. They're both here in the room listening, imaginarily waving at you. That's one thing. Then legislative concepts for next session. So as we know, session starts in 21. And I know Michelle is very involved with legislation and the process. And I do believe she wanted to talk a little bit about some things that she wears two hats. So as a board member, she wears one hat, and then as her other job, she wears a different hat. But one of the things that we wanted to talk about is that we still get some confusion on who's exempt, and if I'm doing A, B, and C for somebody who was, so even if they're only doing like a piece of sexual offense specific treatment, but they're doing it for somebody who was recommended because of drug and alcohol treatment. So there's still that confusion of that overlying of, I don't have to be certified because I'm not doing the full gamut, and this person is not self-referred for this kind of treatment. And so I think we can have a discussion about that, whether or not we want some statutory changes or kind of what we want to do in-house in the meantime, because we can do up a Q&A that kind of says, if you're doing this, this is what certification was required. We can work on internally typing that up, and then once we get it all finalized and approved through DOJ, that will be a public document that we could post on our website and send out to individuals. But now's that discussion that I want to have about 2021. Does anybody have anything they want to talk about?
Nope. You mean anything more? Because I would like to talk about the exemption.
Okay, let's talk about the exemption. What would you like to say about the exemption?
So my understanding is that OYA is expecting that exemption is going to be removed, and they're preparing for that. I mean, I can't speak for OYA, of course, but that's my understanding, and I also understand that they have a big concern in the facilities with the therapists that are doing the offense-specific treatment in the facilities, and youth are coming out and going to get their final hearings, that they're going to be hindered by the fact that they did not have a certified offense therapist, and that the judges are going to be becoming more and more clued into that, and that all of those kids in the facilities are going to be at a disadvantage because of that. So I think that's a very good reason to get that exemption removed.
Oh, because, yes, so that this was commenting. So get it removed so that the therapists in OIA are certified, or have to be certified.
Correct. So when those youth go for their relief hearings, they're able to have therapists that are certified, that are able to document that they have that they are using, the recommendations of the SOTB board for practice. It just makes them so much more legitimate and helps those kids in those hearings.
Yeah, that makes total sense. Commenting.
This is Malcolm. Do we know, how many of those therapists wouldn't be able to meet criteria to be certified? Just out of curiosity. Or
this is Crane. I have no idea. I know a number of therapists. I get a lot of kids that come out of those from facilities for aftercare, and many of the therapists that they worked with are licensed within their profession, which, given that, makes it easier for them then to become certified with SOTB.
yeah, I feel like, because we see a number on the adult side that of our Measure 11 prosecuted adults but go to OYA because they're under the age of 18, and then of course they come out and have to re-engage in treatment with someone who is certified and go through that process. So sometimes it could result in additional costs to the individual that might have been hard to say depending on the treatment program, but I agree that I think we need to go towards working on that exemption.
This is commenting. So Malcolm, do you think
is that the reason why? Because I mean, I get those referrals for people that have been through OIA and then they have to do more treatment. Is that the reason why? It's because the treatment that they received at OIA is not seen. It wasn't provided by a certified person. You think that would reduce their requirements?
I think there's a component of that. I would have to kind of get some more information and defer to some of my staff that are more closely tied to that. But there's a number of things. It just may help, hopefully some consistency in that treatment process. And also, I think that everything that we do to have more consistency across the system for those that are justice involved and sex offense specific, that it just makes for a better treatment for the individual and has a better outcome.
This is Crane. OIA is doing that. They have a work group that's been meeting, I guess, maybe almost a year now, that is looking at having some standardizations across the facilities so that there is more consistency when used, because you jump around from facility to facility a lot of times, or they go in and out of treatment programs in the community and then get kicked out of them and back into the facilities. So OIA is very aware of that lack of consistency, and they do have this work group that's working on it.
So this is Joe Ferguson. So it's along those same lines. So from a county perspective, where we maybe use with therapists and they fail at that at a correction facility, that did help them behind it, having a certified therapist working with them if they're coming out and then have to try to do those relief hearings, or if they're older youth adults that are going. I mean, it seems like there needs to be some standardization. I know that there have been differences of opinions between OIA and county level in terms of that ongoing concern. Some of the consistency from a board perspective, that would help.
So Joseph, your phone keeps cutting in and out, so I'm not sure if everybody caught exactly what you were saying, and if you're traveling or if you're at home, but we caught about half, I think about half what you said.
Okay, sorry. I am actually camping, and so I've driven down to get reception.
Oh, okay.
So I'm doing the best I can.
You're fine. Yep.
So I think I'll try to summarize a little quicker. Just I agree on the consistency between outpatient and facility based, and I think anything the board can do to help that will be an improvement.
Okay. This is Clemente. Yeah, that's helpful to know, because I don't work in that system or around that system, so who do what your perspective is on it, and it sounds like if it would be helpful to the youth to have all that consistency and to get that exemption removed, then I think that's been a focus or a goal, but I think that makes it even. It just strengthens that resolve, I guess, for me personally.
And this is Crane. Here's a really good example. As a community-based certified treatment provider for adolescents, I recently got a youth that's in a residential program, but their therapist is not certified, and then left. And he's done 9/10 of his treatment work, but I'm being asked to sign off on it as the certified therapist, and I'm not comfortable with that. And so that means that this youth needs to go through some steps with me so that I can sign off on that, and it would avoid that kind of thing too. I just really think that taking out that exemption is really going to help these kids a lot, and so many of them are so defeated because they do all this treatment in the facilities, and then they come out and are told they have to keep doing treatment because it wasn't with a certified therapist or it wasn't, a quality program.
Yeah. So since we're talking about this is Clemente, since we're talking about this in the context of legislative session, I think one thing that would be, and Michelle, please interrupt because you're the expert on this, but and Sylvie and whoever else, but it seems like what would be really important as far as preparing for this would be for people who work in that system, just like to give stories exactly like what you're talking about, Kelly, and same with you, Joe, to be able to, as your role, not obviously not on this board, but as your role in the community and your regular job, to talk about how the exemption or the inconsistent provision of the offense-specific treatment, how it impacts the youth directly and just makes it more difficult systemically as well, just not just for the youth, but for the providers and all of us that work with them in the system. So to be able to have some of those specific examples and be able to, to find some people that are willing to either write up some testimony or to testify or to, do that kind of stuff. I don't know if I'm stepping out of line here by talking about this. But.
Oh, not at all. This is Sylvie. When we were at session, I do believe last year or 2 years ago, God, my time's all messed up now. Whenever we were at session the last time we worked on this stuff, the exemption, this is that exemption, and Michelle can kind of go through the history of it, but the exemption is still in there where it says a person employed by a local, state, or federal government agency, and so that's where you get your state OYA and DOC where they don't have to have the certification. That exemption has been a topic of every time that we've gone to session, so if we were to bring this up again, well, obviously legislators change, but they should all kind of remember this history of us talking about it, and we knew that we were doing things in phases. Bill Davis was around back when the first statutes were created and knew that everything had to be done in stages. So if Michelle's, that group that she's a part of, wants to bring a legislative concept forward, then that is exactly what will need to be done, is the history of why is it this way, and now that it is this way, here's a negative aspect of it and why we feel it needs to be changed.
There's a question, Malcolm. Is there an exemption similar to that for any other licensure in Oregon for, OYA or DOC that, or is this one that was cut out just for this process only?
So this is Sylvie. For one, you got to be careful. There's a whole lot of different licensing boards in the state. So there's 280 boards. So the odds of somebody else having language like this is, actually we know that there are some that are carved out so that if you work for example, we have environmental health specialists. So if you work for DEQ, which is Department of Environmental Quality, if you work for DEQ, you do not have to have the license. But however, if you instantly move outside of that company, you have to have the license through us. So that's a very specific one board that comes to my head right away. So yes, this kind of wording is in others, but your profession is very unique when it crosses from a youth to an adult, from inside a prison, outside a prison, that kind of thing. So
But I take it DEQ has certain standards and requirements of their employees that would be equivalent to what the licensure requirements are?
I'm not 100% positive because I don't know DEQ well enough, but I would assume.
Okay.
I would assume.
Yeah. Okay.
This is Michelle, and I appreciate everything that folks have mentioned so far, particularly Kelly, as really, I think it would be helpful to have those very concrete stories. I also think, again, kind of going back to what Sylvie said back in previous sessions, that this was an area that I think that legislators really wanted to lean into, and we, as a whole, were not ready to get there. There were other aspects of the bills that we wanted to make sure were successful. and that this piece of that puzzle wasn't quite in the place where we were ready to move it forward. And what I'm hearing is that we are potentially ready, and I think there are a handful of legislators who will recall those conversations, and I think my hope is we'll be interested in kind of helping round out this last piece. I shouldn't say last piece, I'm jinxing myself. Round out this next piece of the puzzle. And so this is a really, really helpful conversation for me moving forward. Thank you.
All right, this is Sylvie. We ready to move on, or is there any other topics that we want to talk about that potential changes to statutes?
This is Kelly Crane again. I have another one that might be part of this one, but I'm not sure. So please redirect me if I'm going in the wrong direction. I want to give another kind of example, and I'm not sure how to deal with it, whether it can be dealt with in this way. So we now have effective that you have to be certified unless you fit this exemption. And I know of a treatment facility that is not in a facility that is having uncertified therapists do offense-specific treatment, and actually just released a letter for a youth that they discharged, rating him as a high risk to reoffend. And so my concern, of course, is are they really qualified to put that label on this kid? And then how and what is the process for there being a concern or a complaint, given that they are not certified through the SOTB, and this particular therapist isn't even licensed within his area? So is that a legislative fix to put something, some way? Because my recollection is that if there's to be a complaint, the complaint is first made to the licensing board of their particular mental health license, and then it comes to SOTB, but only to SOTB if they are in fact certified. Is that correct? And is that something that may need to be fixed?
So this is Sylvie. Not totally correct. So any complaint we receive, we investigate. So this is a complaint issue. This is not a statute issue. So I would submit a complaint, whether it's from you or from anybody else, but send a complaint to Bob. Bob can start addressing it. He can also check and also submit it to, so even if the person is not licensed to do anything, they may be practicing psychology without a license. They could be doing potentially a whole bunch of things. But that is where you submit a complaint. I think that one of the things that people may not necessarily completely fully understand is that even if you're doing the sexual specific treatment, portions of it, or just saying, oh, I'm only doing the one, I'm only doing the intake, or I'm only doing this, I'm not doing the whole thing, and this person's only here for I'm throwing things out there, drug addictions, and it has to be a part of a drug program, but we're also having to do some of this other stuff. I think the office could be a little bit clearer on what the statutes define as what is and is not required for certification. So I think that we can work on that internally. I would definitely, either you or whomever knows about that place, but submit a complaint. We'll deal with that in a separate issue. And then I think the office can try to be a little bit clearer on when a certification is required, whom is exempt. The exemption is pretty obvious. But, and make sure that people understand that what the SOTB is. So we'll work on that. We'll get some Heather's input on that. And then we'll let you know on how that goes.
Great. Thank you.
Of course. I think one of the things is if Michelle's group, her other group, not this group, her other hat, starts working on a legislative concept, she's always been really good about letting us review it. And I think that one of the things that we could do is review everything and kind of saying, based on like the types of complaints we get, so what things need to be clearer in the statute is something that we could, because we could recommend, it would be nice to have this, I'm saying for instance, on page 2, line 5, it would be nice to have this a little bit clearer. We're getting people who are not understanding what this is intending. And we can do that research in-house too.
This is Michelle. That would be very helpful.
All right. Go ahead.
And Michelle, are you going to reach out and to all the folks that were involved before?
Yes, I will be reaching out by email. Just in terms of other updates about other things that we're involved in. So this is going to be a very busy legislative session for the task force moving into 2021 because of the really critical bills that we needed to accomplish this year that did not happen because session ended with very few bills that had passed. We're going to have to kind of carry some of those into 2021, and there's another bill that we are working on with some of our members. And so right now I know that I have 2 bills separate from any technical fixes or changes to SOTB that would need to address. And so just to like flag, there's going to be a lot of moving parts going into this next session. And so I'm going to do my best to kind of be able to make this list for potentially 3 bills if this one is included in that. But I will be reaching out to folks that have been involved in those conversations before, because definitely going to need more folks rolling up sleeves going into 2021.
Great. Thank you, Michelle.
Yes, of course.
Yeah, this is Clementi. Thank you.
And just a refresher, we're a long ways away from legislative session, but just as a refresher that if you get involved in any of those activities or on that list, you are not doing that in your board member capacity. Just make sure that that's clear for everybody. Even you're always welcome to do anything and everything in your own personal capacity. Just want to clarify that yes, I may be on the SOTB board. However, I am doing this in my capacity as a ABC kind of thing. Just a refresher.
Yeah, thank you. Well practiced in that statement. Absolutely.
All right. Anything more about legislative session? This doesn't mean we have to finalize things today. If you think of anything that in statute could be tweaked, worded, correct, different, or whatever, you're welcome to email it to me, and I can take a look and see if there is an issue or not. So you don't have to think of everything at the moment.
This is Clementi. I do think that clergy piece, I know that the reason that it got added in was just because we were borrowing language from a couple of other licensing boards, and so I think it just got included because of that. But I don't think there's any reason to have that in there, and I don't think there's any opposition against taking it out either, as far as I know. So that might be something that we want to, if we're focusing on, taking exemptions out, we might want to do that at the same time. I don't think there'd be a bunch of clergy members up in arms about it, as far as I'm aware.
Yeah, this is Malcolm. I'd agree. I think in the light of things that have happened over the years since this Witness Act, that it would be wise to have it removed.
So this is Sylvie. I've been doing this for too many years. It is a lot harder to get anything removed out of statute than it is to get something added. So in order to just remove the clergy verbiage, you would have to have some sort of reason why. They want to know what's broken, what are you trying to fix. So you're welcome, I'm just saying, you're welcome to ask for it to be removed, but the odds of them just removing it just because it's accidentally got put in there or it doesn't necessarily need to be in there, they're going to say, well, then why remove it if it doesn't, if you haven't had any issues, then why would we remove it? So just forewarning.
Well, I've got some stories about some clergy doing SO work too.
Well, there you go.
There you go. You might need to get in contact with some of those people. So I'm just giving you how legislators look at things, especially like Michelle said, It's going to be a strange session because the short session, which normally there's a whole bunch of stuff that gets done during the short session, that short session, as you know, only ended up passing, I think there was like maybe three bills that got through the process before the Senate walked out, the Senate Republicans walked out and everything put on hold. So this next session is going to be doing also a whole lot of catch up. So the legislators might be real focused on a whole lot of other things, and certain things, other things might take more of their time. But we'll see.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a hard one. It's going to be a hard one.
Yes. And I think it's going to be fast, because they're going to try and get a lot of stuff done. All right, we ready to move on?
Yep.
Okay. So in your materials, you'll have the statistics. I'll kind of go through these. You hopefully have already looked at these, but you can ask me questions as we're going. So the first one is just certificates issued. So you can see that now that we have the secondaries, we're up to 7 of them. And this is as of, the report was ran on June 17th. There was 2 interns. Next slide will show that same information. Well, actually, it looks like there's only 1 intern on the next slide, but that might be because it's so small of a line. But it shows your trend over time. So we now have gotten, at least we've gotten some secondaries that have signed up, and then we have 2 interns that are working through the system at the moment. Next slide just shows, and if you guys don't need to see these slides, you let us know. Or if you want to see different slides, these are the standard statistics we've been showing you for years. But the first one just shows clinical, age and gender. So you do have, looks like 5 people under the age of 33, which is impressive because you have to have your other mental health degree, your master's degree, and all that stuff. So.
Yeah.
And you have one person.
Right.
You have one person over the age of 74.
Yeah.
And that doesn't necessarily mean that they're practicing, but their certificate is current. Next slide shows the associates. Same information. We have not created that same kind of slide for the secondaries nor the interns because there's so few of them. But we can if that's something you guys want to start seeing. And this next slide shows registrations by county or certifications by county. And this is a slide that you've asked for on a regular basis. So, but it shows that, I printed it out and mine's black and white. So it's really hard for me to tell the difference between the lines. So hopefully yours is in color. Next slide is the financials. And so, yes, they're bad because you guys are in the negative, but you're less bad than you were last year and less bad than you were the year before that. So you're slowly coming up into the positive eventually. So hopefully,
Yay.
I know, yay! So hopefully in the next 5 years, you guys won't be in the negative. And but we've known this has been going on for, I think it's been going on for the whole 10 years I've been here. But you're getting better. Actually, I take that back, because I think that there was one big, huge case that many of you know about, that was here about which is what made you go this far in the negative, and I think I'd been here maybe a year or 2 when that started. So.
Yeah.
But you guys are a prime example of one case going all the way up to the Court of Appeals and what it does to a small board. Even though we prevailed with the whole thing, we won, it still sucked all your money out of you. And so that's, we use you guys, not in a bad way, but we use you guys as an example to our other small boards of why you need to have a cushion. Because you don't ever want to go to the, all the way to the Court of Appeals, but God forbid it does happen, you don't want to be operating in the negative. So. All right.
Yep.
Yeah, all right. Any questions on any of that stuff?
No, I have I have a comment that it's on the clinicals at least.
our number, we're trending. There's a lot more younger people, which is good, and the associate holders, that's on the younger side too, which is encouraging.
Yeah. Very much so. Okay, we'll move on. We are on the regulatory report. Bob.
Hi, good morning, everybody. It's Bob.
Can you hear him? Let's get that.
Can you hear this booming voice?
Yep.
So, as you can see, we have 3 biennium. We'll probably be getting together shortly to on a special session to resolve the case that's out there, 1517, to have that thing closed up. So in 1517, we had a total of 10 complaints, just the 1 remaining open. 1719 biennium, we had a total of 7, 4 remain open. And in the current biennium, we've had a total of 11, and all 11 of those are open.
Wow.
Yeah.
A lot. That's a lot.
Yeah. So, and just as information, we're going to be, for the moving forward, providing the board with case summaries, so the board has a better idea of what we're working on and the types of complaints we're getting.
Right.
And we do all, go ahead, sorry.
This is Malcolm. Of the 11 for this biennium, are you able to distinguish how many different individuals the complaints are against? Or like, is it 11 against 1 or, 11 against 11, I guess is what I'm getting at.
I can safely say there's 11 complaints and there's probably at least 11 respondents.
Wow.
Wow.
Yikes.
This is Sylvie. Please do remember that every complaint that we get, we log it, number it, and catalog it. Just because we received a complaint doesn't mean that that complaint's actually valid, if you know what I mean.
That there's any type of violation.
Yeah, so just because we got 11 complaints doesn't not necessarily mean that 11 people did something wrong. They may have done something wrong in somebody's eyes, but not made necessarily our rules and statutes.
So can I ask this? How many different complainants are there in those 11?
Hard to distinguish. Sounds like you are aware of something that's going on.
No. Well,
okay.
I'm not.
There's 11 respondents.
So what
I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, so we got to remember that the number of license or certificate holders that you guys have is so small, and that we do not talk about the details of cases unless we're in executive session. And during this whole COVID-19 thing and doing everything on the phone, we're trying really hard not to do executive sessions because of the confidentiality part and the logistics nightmare. So we can make sure, though, on your next board meeting, which is November 13th, that there is an executive session on that board meeting, and we can then go through the details of all of these complaints. So then you can ask specific questions, and Bob and his investigators can be here, and we'll go through the details. Does that work for everybody?
They'll also have case summaries.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so next...
All will have case summaries as well, so it'll give you the complaint and where we are with who the complainant is and where we are with any particular investigation.
And I do believe, don't quote me on this, but I do believe we're going to need to have a meeting between now and then that is going to be specific to needing your advice on one case. So, but we will let you know when we're ready for that. Okay?
Okay.
All right. Moving right along. Okay, so now we are on the policy section. So now we need to have this discussion about, and this is another hard one when you're on the phone, because normally if you're all in the room, we can bring up the website, we can go through things together. But this is back in March of 2015, you guys voted on and approved these degrees as your behavioral science degrees. So what we want to do now is have a discussion of, do you want this to change? Do we want to add something? And then we can kind of talk about our internal process. So if somebody has a degree that's not on said list, but they feel that it should be on said list, then we would bring it to you. You then would have to say, okay, let's change our list, and now let's add this other degree, and then we would have a new list, and then it would be updated to, like I say, for instance today, if you wanted to change it, you would we would have a new list, get that new list posted, and anybody who applied after today, if they had that degree, then they could qualify. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, so we had, since March 2015 and now, an individual, and we're not going to approve, quote, her or her degree. What you would need to approve is the degree. So she, I do believe, wanted you guys to review art therapy. And I don't know if anybody has an opinion on that or not.
Board,
do you want to know our opinions, or?
Well, hi Kelly, this is Ann Thompson. If I can refresh everybody's memories, last year we had an applicant who subsequently withdrew their application, but wanted to get through using her art therapy degree. And the conversation that the board had became, oh, well, we know her or we don't. And then we said, well, no, if you approve this degree, anybody with this degree could qualify. So everybody kind of hit the reverse gear and said, you know, maybe we need to look at art therapy as a whole, and then subsequently maybe our degree list as a whole. So that kind of brought us here today. I have the description from the National Center for Education Statistics, the description of art therapy, which I can read to you, or you can just carry on with your knowledge.
I'd like to hear the description.
Yeah, me too.
Okay. And as Sylvia's probably told you before, we don't rely on Joe's school or Fred's University's description of a degree. We go by what are called CIP codes, which is the National Department of Education. And their title for art therapy, therapist, it's in the 51 series, is a program that prepares individuals in consultation with other rehabilitation team members or in private practice to use drawing and other art media forms to assess, treat, and rehabilitate individuals with mental, emotional, developmental, or physical disorders. Includes instruction in art, history, and theory of art therapy, art therapeutic techniques, psychopathology, patient assessment and diagnosis, cultural diversity issues, legal and ethical practice issues, and professional standards and regulation.
Anybody have any thoughts on that?
What is the ultimate, is there a state license for people with art therapy?
Yes.
Yes.
Is it considered a mental health degree? You're a mental health license. According to my understanding, it's not on the list.
It's my understanding that art therapy is not on said list either.
This is Clemente.
Yes, I feel that should be a driving dynamic in making this decision.
This is Crane. I just want to add that I have the understanding that if we do approve additional degrees, and even the ones that we already have, we do have the authority to add some additional qualifications to them if we need to. So I agree that taking into consideration whether it's in a SAD mental health licensing overview, that we also keep in mind that we can add additional qualifications.
Yeah, this is Cunty. Do we know? So you said, Ann and Sylvia, you said that there is an Oregon license for art therapists.
Yes, we license them.
Do we know if an art therapist can be licensed as an LPC or a licensed psychology associate?
One would, as long as they meet the requirements. I mean, having your art therapy license doesn't automatically qualify you for it, if that's what you mean.
Well, what I'm asking is, let's say I have a master's degree in, or a bachelor's or a master's degree in art therapy. I wonder if I could become licensed as an LPC with that degree. And I would imagine that you can. But, and that would make a big difference in my opinion. But let me.
Yeah, I don't know. We'd have to contact them because we don't license them.
Right.
Yeah, I think that's. I would agree with that. That our ultimate licensee has to have a mental health license, be licensed to do clinical mental health work in the state. And if the degree can't eventually qualify the person for that, then we either say, well, this really isn't the track we're interested in, or we bifurcate our certifications and say, well, the people who need that mental health license still need that mental health license, but these kind of more juniors, like the interns or the earlier, or the secondary types that aren't necessarily clinical, that we can allow more latitude there because their functions are not as critical. But we need to, I think, get a systemic idea about are we trying to pull people into our certification process that are eventually going to qualify for a clinical certification, or what's our intent in that? Otherwise, we really do. It's like the potential list of behavioral science degrees is ridiculously broad. And a lot of it has nothing to do with what we do, except in a very sort of basic science sort of way. So, I think we need to kind of come to grips with philosophically how we got to deal with that.
Right. I'm just kind of looking, listening to Ann's description of that degree, and looking at some of these other descriptions that we have on our approved list. I think that one hits a lot of the marks that some of these other ones don't. As far as diagnosis, psychopathology, ethics, and legal issues, things like that. That some of these other ones don't hit. But I agree with what you're saying too, Bill. That if you've got someone who has an associate or an intern or an associate certification, we want people that are going to, hopefully eventually become the clinical level. We want to make sure that they'll be able to get there.
So that makes your question, I think, really relevant in that if the LPC people would eventually license an art therapy degree, then that gives us at least one covering of assurance or security that the person's going to have the basic training that they need.
So this is Sylvie. Would you like us to reach out to them and ask them if that kind of degree would eventually allow somebody to get a license?
I'd like to know.
Okay.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yep, we'll reach out to them.
So licensed clinical social work?
No, the license for professional counselors, LPC board. You want me to send you the link?
Please.
Yeah, I'll do that.
Okay, so we'll get some more information on that.
Would they accept an art therapy?
And this is Michelle. I want to add something. I completely defer to the other folks on the board with regards to this. I also, as I was listening to the description of some of the things that art therapists cover, and I'm recalling conversations that some of the work groups that we facilitated in my job at the task force is just around improving access to culturally specific treatment services, and I'm wondering if this is something where this particular degree is included, if it meets all of these other criteria that folks are asking for, which I think is appropriate. I like the idea of this being an opportunity for that, as we're looking particularly at communities of color and where art therapy might meet some of those culturally specific needs. And I wanted to get that on the record.
Yeah, absolutely. And for whatever reason, your email's not coming up on my, I don't know why, but could you give me your email again?
Remember, we're on record right now. She can take she can take notes. She'll write it down. I think the other thing that we're going to ask, just because I know about it, because it came on the same time art therapy did, but it's music therapy. We're going to ask about those 2 degrees because we license both those, and those are brand new professions for Oregon. And we'll find out some information for you.
Okay. So just to be clear, this is Ann. I'm going to be reaching out to the Board of Licensed Professional Counselors and ask, would an art therapy and a music therapy degree lead to licensure at their board? Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, very good. Okay, so that addresses those 2 concerns. What about the actual said list? Has everybody read through the said list that's currently posted and what we're currently using? Does anybody want to make changes to that now? And if so, what would they be?
Could we go through this list, like each one by one? Would that be a way to approach it?
No.
No?
When you guys read this because this is these have been around for obviously we've been using this list for the last 5 years. The only issue we have noticed in the last 5 years would be the art therapy thing. But if you guys want to change this list, now would be the time, because you're going to have to vote on it and everybody's going to have to agree. So I don't know if anybody wants to talk about anything specific on it.
Well, this is Kelly Crane, the genetic counseling counselor. I think that's one that I don't see why it's on here. Towards the end of the list.
Uh-huh. Does anybody else have anything besides that?
No.
This is Ann. Is the degree in criminal justice with a minor in any of those still applicable? That's at the bottom.
Yeah. This is Mindy. I know I saw that. I remember us talking about that in the past, and
Yeah, I still think it's applicable because if I'm a criminal justice major and I have a minor in psychology or something like that, I'll be able to apply to a grad program in any of these other fields that are more directly related, and I think that's still
Okay, brilliant. Thank you.
Yeah. And I kind of think that with the genetic counseling too, even though it's that by itself is not really related at all to what we're doing, at least not until we find a genetic component to sex offending.
Right.
But I see that also as the same way, like, someone who has a bachelor's degree in that would still be able to go get into a grad program that is more closely related. So I think that's why some of these are really broad, but I think they're still valid because people can still funnel into the field even though they start off in, kind of really maybe, kind of a broader, origin, I guess.
Okay. Well, that just made it easy then.
I think.
Good.
I think the last one on the list, rehabilitation and therapeutic professions, is sort of where I mentally put things like art therapy and music therapy. The more adjunctive rather than primary clinical providers. And I think that's, but again, the logic of letting some of these degrees exist because they can't funnel into graduate degrees that would qualify is a good logic. I like that idea.
Well, and this is Sylvie. I think part of the art therapy, they have a master's degree in art therapy, so they're not necessarily going to then turn around and say, oh, well, now I'm going to go and get a master's degree in psychology. So that's where we want to be, because they'll have a master's degree. What they'll need is another mental health license, which art therapy currently doesn't qualify for. They're also going to need to have all that training, the specific. So just food for thought when you're thinking about this.
Yeah,
that's why the criteria of whether or not they qualify for an existing mental health license in the state of Oregon is very important.
Right. Okay.
So this is Heather.
I heard Heather.
Yes, thank you. In regards to the genetic counselor and removing that, if it still funnels into the field and is therefore similar to why the other degrees are on the list, I think we need to have more of a discussion as to why that would be removed from the list.
Oh, sorry, Heather. They've changed they're going to leave it there because it does lead. So from what I'm hearing right now, they do not want to make any changes to this list. They want us to do a little bit more research on art therapy and music therapy.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. So we'll put this.
This is Crane. I guess hearing that the art therapist is a master's level. Are any of are we assuming that all of these are bachelor's degrees that are then leading into something, or do we need to consider that someone might have any of these degrees at a master's level and want to become certified?
So this is Sylvie.
Well,
go ahead. Go ahead.
This is Bill. Again, to become a licensed mental health practitioner in Oregon, they would have to have qualifying degrees and curriculum. So even if they did have that as a master's, as was stated earlier, they would have to do another additional work or even another master's degree to qualify. So that's, there's a little bit of safety in that, I think.
This is Sylvia. That's exactly what I was going to say. You got to remember the clinicals have to have a master's degree in one of these, and then they also have to have that mental health license. But in order to get that mental health license, they're really going to have some sort of, so even if they have a degree in genetic counseling, If I'm a licensed psychologist, I obviously had to do everything in order to get that license. So that's where there's some help there in assuring that those individuals are qualified.
This is Crane. So are we assuming that everybody who gets certified as an associate, for, the secondary or the associate, that they have the intention of going on to get their clinical? Because I don't think that's an accurate assumption. In which case, then we're going to have a lot of practicing associates with, potentially a genetic counseling degree.
So two things. This is Sylvia again. Two things. So the secondaries or clinicals, they have to have a mental health license. So your associates have to be under the supervision of a clinical. So you're still have that reassurance that the clinical is watching them and making sure that they're doing the correct thing. But no, an associate only has to have a bachelor's degree. And we never assume, Bill might be able to answer a little bit better, but we never assume that just because you have an associate, you're going for your clinical. You could stay associate forever. There's no rule that says you can't.
Right.
And that's fine. I mean, I think that's why we have that, the supervision requirement in there, as well as the, kind of the ongoing, the training and the experience to qualify at the associate level too. So you have to also demonstrate that you've already got that experience and the training in the specific SO field.
Correct. All right. Anything else about the degrees that anybody want to talk about? All right. We will move right along then. So we had to pick out and open one of your rules because we noticed that remember when we did all that rule rewriting, we missed something. How unusual. So in your packet, I don't know what page you're on, but it has the rules. So remember anything, it's kind of hard because the titles are bold, but the new language is bold, excluding the titles. So we needed to add in the disclosure statement to everything. So hopefully everybody's reviewed these rules. It's not a huge change. It's just to align it with what's in the statute. But we do need you to make a motion and approve and vote on adopting proposed rules and the rule schedule so that we can get this thing moving forward. But let's talk about the rules. Does anybody have any questions on what we did?
Yeah, this is Commenti. I'm not sure what you did.
Okay. Do you want me to do this?
No, you're fine. So it's just on the first part of the rules, it says application requirements for certified secondary clinical sex offense therapist. God, those long titles. So number 2 is in bold. It says submit a complete professional disclosure statement as defined in ORS 675.365. We added that because it wasn't in the rule, but it needs to be in the rule. Does that make sense?
Yep.
And then we also added in, for number 4, submit proof of having an active Oregon mental health professional license or equivalent as determined by the office, or proof of being a registered intern for a mental health license.
Okay.
Which is also in statute.
And 6 was added because it's in the statute.
And 6 was added because it was in the statute. God, we missed a whole bunch of stuff. This is what happens when you're trying to do rules. So it doesn't drastically change anything. It's just lining the rules up with statute. So. And then the next one down is just the application requirements for associate. They have to do the disclosure statement. So they just have to submit that with their application. And I think the applications already have it in it. Mm-hmm. It just wasn't in the rule.
Yeah.
So the application had the disclosure statements, so they were filling them out. Mm-hmm. We just didn't have that line in the rule.
And board, this is Ann. The only change, even though it's minor, is that we wanted to bring to you the idea that somebody who's applying through reciprocity, which is rare if ever that it happens where they're coming from another state, that the policy we wanted to bring to you guys was the idea that if somebody is submitting for certification through reciprocity, they're coming from Texas and their qualifications are substantially similar, that they should have to follow our Oregon applicants and also submit a professional disclosure statement. And while that's an option, it's not statutorily required, the office thought it would be a good enough policy to put here and bring before you.
Sure.
Does anybody have heartburn with us requiring, not that we've had an application for reciprocity for as long as I've lived here or worked here, but if somebody was to apply through reciprocity, do you have a heartburn with us requiring them to submit a disclosure statement also? Because that's not in the law.
No.
God, you guys are easy. Okay. Anybody have any questions about the rule and why we did it, or any not understanding, or? Okay. Well, then we will move on. We are on item number 5. At this time, we are not, make sure that I understand that you guys correctly, you do not want to change any of the approved degrees at this time. Is that correct?
Yes.
I'm going to ask everybody. Kelly Clemente, is that correct for you?
Yes.
Kelly Crane, is that correct for you?
Yes.
And Bill Davis?
Yes.
And Joseph?
Yeah.
And Malcolm?
Yes.
And Michelle?
Yes.
Okay, just want to make sure. Okay, so we will leave the degrees as is. They will stay posted on the web. We will not change anything for now. If anything comes up later and we do need to change something, or you think of something, just let us know. We'll get it on the agenda. We can talk about it again. Does not mean it just, we don't ever vote on it again, but as of right now, we won't do anything. So we'll move on to the next item, which is to vote and adopt the proposed rules and the rule schedule. So if you go in your slide past the rules, a couple pages in, and it shows a, because you have to approve this too, the rule schedule. So obviously today is July 10th, and that's where you guys will review and approve proposed rules. And then Ann has to do a bunch of work because we have to follow this process. And then at your November 13th board meetings, you will vote to adopt them permanent and address any comments, questions, anything like that from the public. And then they will go into effect on December 1, 2020. Any questions?
Nope.
Nope. Okay, so if you go back one slide from that, if somebody other than Kelly Clemente, because she can't, because she's the chair, would make a motion to adopt the proposed administrative rules and the rule schedule.
This is Malcolm McDonald. I make a motion to adopt the proposed administrative rules and rule schedule.
This is Michelle, I second.
So Kelly Clemente, a motion has been made and seconded, and you now need to call roll, and they can indicate with yay or nay.
Okay. So Kelly Clemente, aye. Kelly Crane?
Aye.
Bill Davis?
Aye.
Joseph Ferguson?
Aye.
Malcolm McDonald?
Aye.
And Michelle Rowland Schwartz?
Aye.
Good job, you guys. Okay. So we are on item number 6, which is public interested parties feedback. I do not believe, is there anybody on the phone from the public? Okay, that would be a no. We are now on item number 7, which is other board business. Is there anything that anyone would like to talk about?
This is Crane. I have 2 things. One is it came to attention that in our on the website, when you're checking out what the guidelines for treatment are, there's a reference made to the ASTA guidelines, and you have to be a member of ASTA to access those guidelines. So people who are not members of ASSA are not able to review in total what the juvenile standards are.
So this is Sylvie. We will make sure that the website says that you can either contact ATSA or you can contact us, because we have them. And they're welcome to come here and review them all they want, and because we have them. So it was never our intent to force anybody to be a part of an organization. So we will make sure that the website is updated to let people know that we have them and they're welcome to come here and review, make photocopies, whatever it is that they need.
And then the second thing is we talked some time ago about reconvening a work group around the curriculum. We ran into a glitch because we didn't have, I think we wanted 2 people from SOTB and 2 people from OASA, and then at least 1 representative from Victims Advocates, and I think we didn't find enough people. I'm curious if we could try to reconvene that group. I know there's a lot of interest in doing that from OSODIN, and what would be the process to get that going again if we so choose?
So this is Sylvie. One of the things that we cannot start doing until COVID-19 is we are moved out of phase 2. So as of right now, state offices are closed. They're closed to the public until a minimum of August 31st. Depending on how things go, that could be extended. Right now, we can only do by appointment only for people coming in to do testing, to get licenses and all that kind of stuff. And we are to limit the amount of our meetings to things that are necessary. And so that's why you guys only have 2 board meetings this year. And a lot of our other boards are limiting that down. So I think it's a little early to be working on that stuff. We could maybe talk about it again in November. But we also, like I said, did not, like you said, we did not get enough people who are interested in it. And Ann wants to add a little bit.
Kelly, if you recall at the last board meeting, Kelly Clemente and Bill Davis said that a curriculum would be up to associations, and they would go back and talk about that rather than having a training group.
Is everybody deep in thought?
Yeah, I don't recall that they were looking at that in lieu of getting a work group together to come up with some standardizations for training.
Yeah, my understanding that was what was in the plan, was to get a work group together, part of which would include trying to gather curriculum from around the associations.
Yeah, and
Right.
does anybody know of anybody who does have any kind of curriculum stuff?
This is Clemente. I've talked with other state chapters and that do provide some kind of a training curriculum. I don't have specifics, but I do have, contacts where we could pull from or get ideas from to at least get some conversations started. But it's my understanding. I think it would be helpful to have the work group through SOTB working in conjunction with the associations. We do have people that are interested, quite a few people on our OASA board that are interested in being part of that work group. So I'm sorry that was miscommunicated, But yeah, I do think a work group would be a helpful piece to get things moving and get everybody around the same table.
Yeah. So Kelly, if you have contacts can you email them to Ann so she can start reaching out and trying to get some documents? Because we're going to obviously need documents. And then make sure that everybody has the same documents to be reviewing, saying, here's what we're looking at, here's what we're trying to do. So, and normally, because we have the perfect room for it, which there's like 3 or 4 of us in here at the moment, in this ginormous room. Normally we would offer up this room and so that everybody could come here and we could, make it everything all smooth. But that's where I'm saying right now we can't do that. We cannot open our building up. So I have no problem starting to do some of the legwork now, but the odds of being able to meet in a room anytime soon are pretty slim.
Yeah.
Are you guys up to be able to do go-to meetings?
No. So with everything that's going on, so here's a little history lesson. In State Government 101, everything moves really slow. So now that we are all stuck from like working at home and doing all this stuff, and there's the Zoom meetings and Skype and all that stuff, well, none of it's secure, so you can't talk about anything confidential on it. So now they're scrambling to try and get us, I do believe it's called Microsoft Teams. So that apparently has some more security to it, because obviously we talk about a lot of confidential stuff. The state as a whole, not just us. And and so we're supposedly going to be getting that. If we get that, then we will also have to get some other equipment. So, but that again is not going to happen anytime soon. So. It's hard. Having board meetings right now is hard, and we all get heartburn. We all practice all this stuff, because if we have an issue with the phones, then we can't have a meeting. I mean, it's just it's horrible. But we also have to record everything because it's all public record. So we're still running Granicus, and we're still posting that out on the website so that anybody can go out there and listen to our board meetings. And they also can see all of us staff members sitting at the board talking to a phone.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's just a different, it's odd. It's a different world, and things are changing so fast that our IT department, because you gotta remember it's statewide, they don't do things just for one agency, it's everything statewide. Because we're all on the same network. All state agencies are on the same network. Everything has to be tested, vetted. I mean, ask Heather how horrible her trying to work from home and how secure all of her stuff is, and then her computer went down and it wouldn't send anything out, and yeah, it's a tough world we're all living in right now. It's a little different.
Yeah. Sure.
Yeah. But yeah, so send us anything, even Dr. Davis, if you have anything that you can think of curriculum-wise. We have zero issues reaching out to these people and saying, hey, we're trying to get this group together. Do you have any information? Do you have some sort of standard? So we can do some digging if you guys get us, kind of pointing in the right direction.
Okay.
All right, good thought.
Okay, anything else, any other topics anybody wants to bring up?
No.
All right. So, Clemente, you should have, in one of your scripts that are somewheres, you should have the...
Adjourn, yeah.
Yes.
Okay, the Sexual Offense Treatment Board meeting is adjourned at 10:56 a.m.
Okay.
My gavel.